Our first guest today is Kair Lake. She is a senior advisor for the U.S. Agency for Global Media, and of course, we did not plan on talking to Kair about this. But Kair, I thought you would be a good resource on this as a very experienced news anchor. Both of you and I have covered way too many of these stories. One of the tragedies here is often in these school zones. These are gun-free zones as well. But just first reflect on the fact that we have someone, according to the police chief, who was a coward and decided to fire from outside the church inside to these children who were sitting there praying during Mass.
It's just so horrific. It's depraved. And what a coward he was to be shooting at little children who were attending the first week of school, attending Mass. It just breaks my heart. And keeping those families, the school, the staff at that school, and that whole community in our prayers. And this kind of stuff has got to end. We've got really sick people out there. We've got a city that has had a crime problem, but this goes just way further than what you could ever imagine somebody pulling off in a church with school children. It's sick. And I hope they are able to quickly figure out where this sick person got the ideas, if there was anybody else involved. I know that he took his own life. I'm glad he's no longer here. But the pain will continue and persist for many, many years, and really forever, for those families who lost children, and the trauma that the children have had to undergo during this horrible ordeal.
Yeah. We did not get any kind of motive. We were waiting for that. The police chief said they didn't have any kind of motive on that. But, initially, again, drawing back on your experience as a news anchor, what are the types of questions that come to your mind, and what do you think we can learn here at least in the near term, before we get more information from the authorities?
Well, I don't know. Was he planning this for a while? We will be able to find out if this was something he had planned. Was this done on a whim? Did he live nearby? Did he come from another state to come in and create this carnage? And who is this guy? Is he here an American citizen? Is he part of a criminal network, a gang, something like that? We don't know. And so we want more information on who the shooter is, if there were any signs that were ignored, that perhaps were reported but went uninvestigated. That'll be something that's critical. But really, the time right now is to provide the support that those families need, that this church community needs. And obviously, we want more information about the shooter. We want to know where this idea came from, what he was listening to, and maybe who was encouraging this behavior, and what was going on in his mind. But I'm really most concerned right now about those families and making sure that they have the support that they need.
Yeah, the mayor, Jacob Frey, mentioned they're setting up a center for the victims' families to join and get counseling. Of course, we know many people will need that. Kair, one of the things that we see in these types of situations almost immediately after the fact is there's a call for gun control. Do you expect to see that happen here?
I think there's always politicization of things like this, of horrible acts of violence like this, and for many people, they rush right to calling for taking away people's right to defend themselves. The church that I belong to and that I go to, we actually have armed security at our church, and it's come to the point where we have to have armed security. But it's always a good guy with a gun who stops a bad guy with a gun. And our Second Amendment isn't going anyplace. We need to be able to protect ourselves. We have the right to bear arms, and it's not going anywhere. But what we have to do is figure out what is causing these young people. This, according to the police chief, it was a 20-year-old. A 20-year-old who should be starting his life and have the rest of his life in front of him, is so deranged and demented that he's spending his time focusing on how to create carnage. And so that is disturbing. And we need to look at the mental health crisis in this country. Many times we find out that these shooters were on a lot of medication, and look at the cause and effect of that. And there's a lot more to this than just guns. And people have a right to bear arms and to have guns. We have a Second Amendment. And as I said, that's not going anywhere. But we need to look at what is motivating, many times, young men to take part in this kind of violence.
Yes, the mental health aspect, it always comes into play when you're trying to assess the motive. And again, we don't have a motive from the police chief. And you mentioned something that's so key. We've reported on several high-profile cases where you actually have had a shooter at a church where a good guy with a gun has been the person to neutralize it. The police can't be everywhere at the same time, especially when we're hearing about Minneapolis. Just last night, they had another violent night. There were not enough police officers on the streets to deal with all the violence there. And again, obviously, this is an isolated incident, but the police, they're stretched pretty thin. And that's been a constant threat to Minneapolis going back years.
Well, we've got high crime rates in many of these cities. The cashless bail has caused criminals to get arrested and get put right back on the streets, which means the police are having to constantly rearrest the same people who commit the crimes. And so the police are busy doing that, and then you have a deranged young man who opens fire at a church. And it's so sad that churches are having to hire security now, armed security, to keep their parishioners safe. But that is the reality that we've come to. Now, my question is, does this church, this school, have armed resource officers who were there? Were they not on the scene today? And, one of the things is the same people calling for gun control are the same people who are calling for not wanting resource officers in schools to be armed. I don't know about you, but when my kids went to school, I wanted them to have the best security. I wanted them to have the same kind of security that our banks have. I wanted them to have the same kind of security that our sports arenas have at the school where my children went, and I would want that for your children as well. And so we have to prioritize keeping our kids safe, and that means having good security at our schools. I don't know enough about what happened today to find out if they did have security, and if so, what went wrong there.
Yeah, that it's so true. A lot of parents are willing to pay a premium for armed guards at their schools. Several states, like I live in Florida, all the public schools have armed resource officers on the scene. But it's hard to say what is enough when you have somebody who's willing. Yeah, it's important, but it's hard to say what is enough when you have somebody who's willing to stand outside the church and take aim at little children as they're inside, likely kneeling in prayer when this shooting took place. Carrie, thank you so much for being with us today. Unfortunately, we have to talk about this type of stuff, but I did want to draw back on your experience and get your insight on this. And hopefully we'll see you soon and get to talk about...
I want to send my condolences to the families who've lost to their children. I can't even fathom what they're going through right now, and just really surrounding that community in prayer, including the law enforcement. It's so difficult. They have to come on the scene and handle the situation with professionalism and do their job. And many of them are fathers and mothers themselves, and to have to see that and then continue on and work, it's very traumatic for our law enforcement as well. So just prayers going around to everybody, and I know that they'll get to the bottom of this, and we need to look further at the mental health issues of especially our young men who would even consider to take these lives like that.
Yeah, amen to that. Prayers going out to everyone affected. Carrie, great to see you. Hopefully we can talk to you again soon about Voice of America and everything you guys are doing over there. Until then, take care.
Thanks.